Hi, friends. You guys really like craft kits, huh? So this week I'm not doing another craft kit. Don't worry, I have plenty of them still to do, but this week I actually want to do something else. Paint on these. So this idea was started by Chloe of Chloe Rose Art, and I loved her so much. It was so beautiful. I've done a couple of these already, and they aren't one of my most popular series, but I actually really like doing them, and I still have license plates left to do. So here we go. The license plate I'm going to do today is Nebraska. I picked this one for obvious reasons. I live here. This is a trailer plate, so it's not one of our standard license plates, which are also really boring. But this one is extra boring, so I'm going to try to punch it up a little bit. Usually these plates are pretty dirty and bent and generally gross, but this one doesn't even really look like it's been used, except for a couple of small dents. I am going to wipe it down with some cleaner, just to be sure there's no bug DNA or something on it. The lettering on this plate is flat, so once I start painting on it, it's going to disappear. So to preserve it, I used some tracing paper to sketch out the state name and numbers. This way I can bring them back later when I'm ready. Then I threw on a quick 3 coats of white gesso, and all my prep steps are complete. Since Nebraska is my home state, I really wanted to do this plate justice, so I did a lot more pre-painting steps than I normally would. For instance, rather than sketch directly on the plate, I used a separate sheet of paper. Well, actually I used 2 separate sheets of paper. See, after I had an idea of what I wanted to include, I did the ugliest, roughest sketch ever just to get an idea of the placement of things. Then, on this life-size sketch, I did some basic shapes to test out the placement, the size, and what it would look like with the lettering over the top of it. I also tried every circular item I could find to get just the right size for this dome in the center. I feel very vindicated for never throwing anything away. After I nailed down the size and placement of everything, I went back in and refined the sketch. I made sure my outlines were looking neat. I added in details. I made sure my circles were actual circles and that my lines were straight and even. I also decided that I hated the placement of this flower, so after consulting my design team, aka texting my sister, I moved it over here. So now, to get this sketch onto the plate, I'm going to tape it exactly where I want it and use some transfer paper to trace the lines out. I'm also going to use transfer paper to put the state name and license plate number back on. I did get rid of the first 2 numbers and dash and centered the last 5 numbers on the plate. I just didn't want the number to cover the entire design. Finally, it's time to paint. I am going to put down another sheet of paper to keep the background clean because I'm lazy and I don't want to change it after 1 week. And I think this dark blue is going to match the vibe of this plate better. One more pre-painting step that I took off camera was to take a picture of this sketch and import it into a digital art app. I really wanted to make sure that the colors would look good together before I committed to putting them down. And because one of the most prominent items on this design is a roller skate, I wanted to go with a retro 70s color scheme. I wasn't alive in the 70s, so I downloaded a color palette off of Etsy. Then I used those colors to plan out my design. And that was all well and good, but then I had to find paint markers to match those colors. I went through all 5 sets of paint markers that I have to find the closest matches that I could. Some aren't exact, so I'm hoping they'll work out. I mean, I could have mixed up paint, but I'm using 20 different colors in very small and detailed spaces, so markers are just easier. And with all of that very obsessive planning completed, I started with the background first. For some reason, in my brain, it makes the most sense to start with the background first and work my way towards the foreground. I think it's just easier for me to get the lines neater when I'm working on something that won't have outlines. Even with all of the planning, I still messed up and colored spaces in the wrong color. After the background, I added a stripe to sort of fill out the space. It's more 70s related than Nebraska related, but everything else does have to do with Nebraska. This dome in the middle here is made out of glass, so I tried to convey that by using a slightly different shade of each color where it was behind the dome. I'm also trying to be as precise as I can so that I don't need to do too many touch-ups. But who am I kidding? I still needed to do touch-ups. These spots down here are where my sweaty stress fingers were gripping onto the table. Gross. For this dome, you can see that I tried to paint around and preserve the lines so that I wouldn't need to draw them again. But once I started painting them in, they didn't look straight, so I needed to break out the ruler. Quick PSA, paint markers and rulers do not work well together. Well, crap, I'll have to fix that. So this dome actually houses the world's largest indoor desert. It's at the Henry Dorley Zoo where I live in Omaha. It was just voted the best zoo in the nation, and the Desert Dome was just voted the best zoo exhibit. I might be a little spoiled here since I've had this ginormous, amazing zoo to visit whenever I want my entire life, but I don't think the Desert Dome is the most exciting part of the zoo. It's probably not even in my top 5. But the dome is very iconic, especially for Nebraska, so I included it. So over here is Chimney Rock. While I've never actually visited it, Chimney Rock is pretty well known in Nebraska. I'm pretty sure we all learn about it in elementary school. The giant rock formation served as a landmark along the Oregon Trail, and the reason it's called Chimney Rock is pretty obvious, but according to Wikipedia, it had another name before that. Gotta say, I'm a little disappointed that that didn't stick. This down here is Carhenge. Carhenge is a 2-scale replica of Stonehenge, built with the same size and placement as Stonehenge, except with cars. It was built as a memorial to the artist's dad, who lived on a farm where Carhenge now stands. This is a landmark that I haven't actually visited, but I do really want to. I originally planned to make all of the little cars retro models to match the feel of the design, but then I realized how time-consuming that would be for something that ultimately is very small. So I just went with basic car shapes. And since the cars at Carhenge are all spray-painted gray, I just went with one color with some little highlights. The last item on this license plate is a roller skate, because Nebraska is also the home to the National Museum of Roller Skating, which houses exactly what you think it would. Skating memorabilia, costumes, trophies, and the largest collection of historical roller skates, including the oldest pair ever developed. But I need to know exactly what the thought process was here. I struggled a little bit with painting this skate because for certain areas, the only marker I had in the right color was huge. And the space I was painting in was not huge. So I'm having a little bit of trouble being precise. The flower on this skate is a goldenrod flower, which is the state flower of Nebraska, even though I'm pretty sure most people think this is our state flower. This doesn't really look like a goldenrod because I used a really close-up reference of one small flower, because painting this on a roller skate would look really weird. With all of the fun stuff finished on the plate, all that's left is the state name and numbers. Most license plates just use one solid color for the numbers, but I didn't think plain black would show up very well over some of the darker areas. Like this plate is actually going to get used. But regardless, I did still want the lettering to stand out, so I decided on black with a white outline. So I'm going in with a white marker first to make sure all the edges are crisp. And then I'm going to use a black marker to fill in the lettering, leaving a white border. It was a little stressful because I wanted to get my face super close while I was doing it, but it was worth it for how it came out looking. Last, I added a few coats of varnish to seal it in and make it super glossy. And this license plate is done. I really, really love how it came out. The colors are super nice and it doesn't look like anything already out there. All in all, it makes me really happy. What do you think? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.